Hey everybody, Honest Sarcastic here, long time no see. We do get the new patch notes. I believe this is 1.1. No, it's 1.2, sorry. So this is really nice to kind of see some of these new things going on in them buffing champions and slightly nerfing other ones. We'll go over it and hear my thoughts. So Vladimir here gets a shift from doing one to the enemy nexus is going to drain one instead, meaning that if you're playing against like Burn, you're playing anything like Ledros, anything that's kind of going to your face, he helps put you kind of back in that position to survive the blows, or at least not make swinging back and forth a viable option. It gives him some kind of extra freedom versus any of the decks that might elusive smash in, which is actually just really, really nice. But it is only obviously on the leveled up Vladimir, so not a ginormous thing. You still have to get to that stage. You still mess up your board a bit by pinging your own guys. But it'll be interesting to see. Who knows? I might mess with some Freljord. I found some free time as of recent. I'm ahead of my schoolwork, so try to get some videos in for you guys. But they also do note when it goes green, it's a buff. When it's red, it's a nerf. This infographic is done by Saucy Mailman. I'll go at the bottom right. I'll have the link for their website that they put once we go there. So Karma's been relatively strong. We kind of know that. You see like Ezreal Karma anything usually in a really good spot. So Karma here is actually getting a cost increase going to 6. Um, Very seldom was playing it on 5 largely relevant, but there are some situations where you'd kind of be short a bit on your mana. So this change does slow them down a bit in pacing if they try to like jam this on 5, which was normally an important spot still for aggressive decks. They can't just get her in. Um, 6 may not realistically do anything. No other stats were changed. No other part of the ability was changed. But it is a minor nerf to kind of see what happens. It also screws up kind of end game situations. So let's say you had the full 10 and the 3, you would have been able to play on yielding before. So you could go Karma and yielding and then just like protector. Um, can't really get away with that anymore. Was that relevant? Probably not. But we do see like that matters sometimes where let's say you don't have the spell mana going into a round. If you try to jam her and still play a spell on the back end, you may be short now. So we've seen Deny, make a minor change going from 3 to 4 and things like that. So like this cost adjustment may do nothing, or it may hurt her just enough to kind of slow the deck down from like those key situations. I'm trying to think of like the ones that would kind of matter the most, where you kind of need to resolve them in, and it'd be like jam Karma and then play removal into the opponent, and then still have like Deny backup. So Karma plus Deny only leaves 3 available up. You can still cast all your Mystics and get excited, but you can't do a ton more than that, and that's assuming you're on 10 with full spell mana. So going past Karma, we have Shen. Shen they felt still wasn't seeing enough play. We saw some Shen prior to Bilgewater coming out. Um, Not so much as of recent. He gets an attack buff. So 3 attack now. I think a 4-drop 3/5 is actually really well statted, right? Because like the base concept is up until about 5 mana. You're looking to have double whatever the cost is in stats. At 1 mana, it's a little different because or technically like 1 and 2 is where it's a little different because you're looking at like 2 1s and 1 2s. The occasional like 3 1. We had the 3 2 that couldn't block. That's getting adjusted now. But after that, it kind of scales where 2-drop 3 2 or 2 3. There's 5 stat there. At 3, you'd say like on average you'd max out at like 7 for a generic. We did have Badger Bear being a 4/4, which is worth 8. But this here is actually just really viable. Can block Badger Bear, can block Ranger, and survive it on point for on 4. And the 3 attack now kills all the 2 3s and 3 3s in 4 3s. So that's actually just really nice, especially on an attack front, because the two damage when you were swinging, there was a lot of units that could just survive that. But same thing, the leveled up Shen gets the additional attack as well. So we're looking at a 4/6, pretty well statted. Getting them leveled up is a whole other story. Now we get Vi. Vi is interesting because Vi's a newer champ. Vi, like, reading the base stats, we're just like, oh, okay, this is fine. Vi's really turned out to be a very strong champ in that the stats you got were just chock full of value. 5 health with toughness. Um, I think it's actually say toughness. I can't remember if it's actually just tough. But anyways, so if she came down as a 5/5, she could actually fight a Garen and win, stay alive. Fighting the smaller units, anything with two is only going to do one. It was just small dents. They've gone and they've removed one of her health, which is very useful overall. So now she's going to die into any of the five combat units, whereas before she could just kind of beat all of them, obviously, and like that's a pretty large difference because she could pretty much beat anyone that came down on five, no questions asked. Um, and now she can't. So we'll see how much that is even remotely relevant. um, what is it like a thermal for five before couldn't kill her, but now a thermal for five would. And it being turn five, assuming no spell mana, blah blah blah. We'll see, how much of a point this makes. But what am I trying to think? Like now she would actually die to two units with three combat because they would do two and then two, and it would actually kill her. Whereas before she lived, we see the one health difference on the champion. I'm sorry, the level up champ as well. Pretty customary for them to do that across the board. Hecarim actually gets a buff. I think pre-Bilgewater, if anyone told you Hecarim was going to get a buff, they probably would have smacked you in the face and told you, called you a liar. So we get one combat here. Hecarim's now a 5/5, getting statted about the same for a 5-drop. It's pretty nice on the attack end. Not being able to kind of beat things like Garen or Vi before was pretty rough. A lot of time you just kind of stop seeing play from Hecarim. I think the two combat on the Spectral Riders was actually the bigger issue than Hecarim's stat himself, but they're obviously not going to give you that third combat back on those guys. So getting the pump here on Hecarim's really nice. Works well for his overwhelm. So we'll see how that goes. See if he starts getting some play anymore at all, especially with all of the Demacia nerfs happening. I'm not sure how often open board states are occurring, but he's always been nice if he can swing in. Now he's back to swinging in for 9. In the old days, he used to swing for 10. 4 for him, and then 3, and then 3 in the overwhelm. So now 5, and then 2 and 2. So we'll see how relevant that is. May not be. It may. We'll find out. I'm trying to think like what Hecarim decks or what Shadow Owls decks you'd want where you'd willingly want to kind of jam in early, and it feels like a lot of the Shadow Owls decks are kind of just either going with spiders, or they're just pushing into the long game with Ledros. But obviously big Hecarim gets that pump as well. 6/6 overwhelms, actually just really big. I don't know how often we actually get this guy leveled up though. That's a whole other story. Speaking of getting combat, we do get Great Horn Companion here. So it's kind of weird because I actually kind of liked playing him originally, until I was running into just kind of bigger issues. The five butt was really large. You still obviously couldn't beat like Garen's in those matches, but versus everything else, it usually made him big enough to stay alive or at least kill one guy and then die to the second or a spell. But 5/5 here now. Primarily, I don't know how relevant this is. Bilgewater has a 4/4 that gives vulnerable, and also has scout. He's not really seeing play. The additional one health. I mean, sorry. Well, on top of that guy, the additional one health, one combat, doesn't seem largely relevant. The biggest place where I think it makes a change is with Remembrance. If you see like a round 3 Remembrance now, swinging with a 5/5 twice is actually just really scary. Any of the control decks could see that come down and then just look at their hand and actually not have an answer, and that can be largely problematic. Is it going to be the game ender for some deck? Probably not. But it is really scary when you kind of compare it to the Piltover and Zon one that just makes a generic 5/5. 5/5 with Scouts is like really good. Um, I can't see a world where this is largely relevant, but maybe it somehow tries to take a spot away from something in Demacia, but just doesn't seem likely. Going 5-drop 5/4 with Challenger that replaces itself, it's much more beneficial versus Control. And trying to open into the Scout first just kind of sets yourself up to get ruined by removal or some fat guy that can now block your small guys that wasn't there before. Open attacking around this round has been largely important throughout time. All right, speaking more of Demacia, we see Grizzle Ranger get a wow, my brain's farting. Nerf goes from 4 combat to 3. This is actually a pretty big change from a health total standpoint. Um, if he got to play it and you didn't have a real answer, you were looking at taking 8 damage. Now you're looking at taking 6 in theory if you don't block it either time, which is a little bit more stomachable. Also, and if you have any of your units that come down on 4 that are 4/4s, you can actually survive the fight with the ranger now. And then when they swing in the second time, you can go either trade in with some guy or just, dent in somebody, especially since, he pulls the Badger Bear, who is also really big. Grizzle Ranger prior was kind of obscene because for 4 you were getting a 4/1. You got to swing in twice. If you killed him, then they got to have a 4/4, which was kind of already like the generic stat for a 4 drop. Um, it wasn't a blank, unit stat, but that's like Loyal Badger Bear was just kind of huge for a 3 drop. Which makes sense to why they changed it. Loyal Badger Bear is now going to be a 3/4. 3/4 and 4/3 is about that area for what a 3 drop should kind of be at most, right? Um, if we kind of look at the other units available, like Sennas are like 4/2 Quick Strike, or Quick Attack, sorry. The Ionia one has like a 4/2 that can get you the 2-cost spell that pumps the health by 3. Um, Other than that, you're looking like primarily at like 3/3s, right? The Marauder could attack and be a 4/3 when he swung the first time, but he's going to trade into a 2-drop. Badger Bear still gets to survive all of the 3 combat 2-drops, and is still big enough to kill all the 2/3s and the 3/3s, but now struggles to finish himself off. Badger Bear into your opponent's Grizzle Ranger could now kill the Grizzle Ranger, and then it's still left with 1 health to fight whatever's left after. It's a decrease in damage, so it's gonna kind of slow up the clock just a smidgen, not a whole ton, but that can be large enough where you're no longer capable of threatening the 5 drops. The 5-drop 5/4 challenger now can beat up a Badger Bear and stay alive to go and kill whatever guy after. Can be largely relevant. We'll see how that matches up with like mirrors, but realistically, who cares about mirrors? No one wants to play a mirror. Laurent Chevalier, I think I said that right. Got to switch. He's now no longer a 3/1. He's at a 3/2. With the inclusion of additional kind of damage spells, playing a 3/1 on 4 was pretty terrible when you kind of compared it to Grizzled Ranger. Why would you want to have a 4-drop 3/1 with Scout instead of a 4-drop 4/1 that could attack twice, and if it died, it made a 4/4? Yes, they're no longer those stats, but they were still that good. Now, 4-drop 3/2 strike, and if it once it strikes, it creates another random challenger follower in hand. So anyone has like those 1/1 spiders, he can win and survive and create the challenger and then go do it a second time. Will this make him see play? Doesn't seem very likely unless you need additional challengers or you just kind of need value like that, because if he takes a burn spell to the face, he's still dead and didn't get you anything. But yeah, after that we get standalone. This is probably the best of the changes that came here to kind of nerf something. This is what, the second time one of like the big Demacia wind spells has gotten hit. The first one was back to back. It was just used with an elusive, and you're like, all right, I'll pump 2 of them and smash your head off. And then we saw standalone happen frequently with Solitary Monk, or even Shadow Assassins or Kinko Lifeblades, and like that overall was pretty scary. Right now, there you were seeing the standalone Zed decks. And I guess that was an option before too, technically. Standalone Zed, standalone Fiora. Even like a Grizzled Ranger with standalone was like a 7/4 behemoth that was attacking twice. The main dilemma there was on 3 casting Zed and then standaloning it was kind of just too brutal. There were very few decks that could actually answer or cope with that. So they've gone and they slowed it down an entire round. Now you can play a 2-drop and then standalone it on 3. But the big power that you got from all the 3-drops and doing it is gone for now. I'm trying to think if there may be a way to play a guy with a tune, but no, even then you'd already have 3 spell mana, so it's largely irrelevant. You can't do it that way. It'd have to be a 2-drop. So standalone being a round later makes it much more beneficial, helpful to kind of things like Will of Ionia or just kind of blocking and playing a piece of removal in a future round. I think people will probably still play this, but we'll see how concerned they are with like this just no longer being good enough, because they can't do it on 3. The turn 3 play was just so ridiculous. You would win probably like 20% of your games, or maybe like 15% of your games is like I did this and I won because I was playing against a deck that couldn't actually answer it. Kindly Tavern Keeper. I remember playing this guy when I first did the tutorial. Um, the healing the Nexus was like super sweet, but like a 2-3 was pretty terrible. Uh, the fact that they've given him a combat now actually makes him, I think, well stat enough to actually become a viable option in Freljord decks. If you're concerned with like burn or in general you just want to be able to like kind of heal your guy the same way that you'll use like Iron Elixir to pump the health to stay alive, being able to play a Kindly Tavern Keeper, especially if someone plays like removal at the end of a round and you had like the additional man up to play this guy, or they did like a combat. Fleet Feather Tracker comes in, hits your guy, they plan to like Mystic Shot it the next round, something like that. Yes, I know you don't see those often together. You could Cavern Keeper and heal your guy. And being able to heal the Nexus is super sweet. So being a 3-drop 3-3 is well stat enough where you just see play in general. So some random heals in a region that can't, do that too well seems really tight. Oh, almost running out of breath here, guys. All right, so Broom Crew Rookie. I'd probably say this guy caused more hatred on 2 than any other 2-drop that existed. For control decks, there really just wasn't a good way to answer it with 4 health. And unless you were playing kind of like a 2-drop 3-2 or a 2-3, you just felt like you were in a bad place because even if they attacked and you blocked, you didn't get to kill the guy. So if they just held off and then swung with them the next time, like they got 4 damage in for their 2-drop. I think they were usually pretty happy with that. Now we're seeing that Broom Crew's going to get a loss of 1 health with this nerf. Mainly he's going to be a 1-3. Any of the 2-drop 3-2s now just obliterate him, and it makes it much, much worse. I think we're going to see more of. I guess if you're playing Piltover and Noxus, I expect to see more of the 2-cost 3-1 that when he dies deals 2 damage. Because at least then you could be swinging in if you're free. And Boom Crew Rookies now is realistically only going to be really good versus what the random 2-drop 2-3s you're playing against. I guess he still survives Mystic Shot on 2, but no longer survives the thermal from the skip of 1 to 2, and dies to like get excited. So that's going to be largely problematic. Will this make a huge difference? I'm not quite sure. They may still run him, but I could see the 3-1 getting more use than Boom Crew Rookie because of this. Just because there's a larger expectation where you will no longer be capable of surviving the removal that would have come down. Legion Rearguard is going to get bumped down from a 3-2 to a 3-1. This is kind of rough on him. Yes, playing a 3-2 on 1 was really good for the burn decks. I know I was playing control and deep, and like anytime I saw that, I struggled immensely unless I hit my 1-drop 2-1, because I couldn't answer this guy for multiple rounds. I guess I could like Vile Feast it, but even then it was just really unlikely. But the ring being a 3-1 is real brutal. Like I don't know if there's a change they could have made that kind of still let him survive, but made it worth running him, because now you just rather run the 2-1 that swings and deals 1 damage. Usually, like I guess if they block, they can kill her and they can't kill him. But that 1 health just means like the 1-cost thermal immediately kills it. Oh, I played like a Hapless Aristocrat, it's dead. But Hapless Aristocrat was a good answer anyways. So we'll see how those 2 changes kind of affect burn, and if it starts seeing less play now. Slotbot he's actually kind of an interesting guy. So anyone that's listening in, Slotbot is a 3-cost 0-3. Round start, grant me +1/+0/+1 for each card you drew last round, then shuffle my stats. So the big thing here is if he's not taking damage, if you're drawing multiple cards, you're getting bigger faster. So if you plunder draw 2 cards, Black Merchant, any of those cards, like you could be getting pretty much like +1/+1 per round. If you're playing like the TF card and drawing 3, he gets very big very fast. The dilemma is that he has to survive that. And if he, gets into combat with any units, that can be problematic because if his health is too low, he's going to die. Or in general, his health went down, so he's still kind of like mucking around with a low amount of health. Or end up having like, let's say if he goes on to your start of round and goes to like no damage, you're just like, oh man, I hate this, and then goes to their round and has high damage but low health, he's just wrecked. The one thing I haven't done is, because I haven't really played this card yet, I didn't want to spend my blue cards on it, is to determine if he can actually kill himself by accident somehow. Can he like actually just go to 0 health and die? I'd assume he can't, and they've kind of restricted that. But it is a slot machine card, so maybe. Anyways, the buff here is they're giving it +1/+1, so it's starting with 5 worth of stat. So starting the next round, it should have 6 worth of stat, which is actually just largely beneficial. At that point, you're looking like probably like a 3-3 or 4-2 or 2-4 probably on average, which isn't super amazing. But like I said, if you're playing a specific like TF type deck and you're drawing those additional cards, then this makes him big enough to kind of survive. 4 health is that turning point for surviving, like get exciteds, and like the smaller challenger guys like Fiora and whatnot. But if you're taking like free damage from a Fiora or something, you're probably doomed anyways playing slot bot. But I think it makes him big enough to be much more interesting. So who knows? Maybe I muck around with some TF crazy slot bot deck. I did play some guy who was playing this and then the 4-drop that fleeting draws too. And he got out of hand really fast. Really, really fast. After this, we get Monkey Idol. Monkey Idol's 3 cost 0/4. Immobile, round start, deal 2 to me and summon a Powder Monkey. They're giving it a +1 health stat. So I don't know. I actually cannot remember what a Powder Monkey actually does, to be honest with you. I was thinking Powder Keg for the longest time when I read this. But give me 1 second. We'll talk about a Powder Monkey. So Powder Monkey is a 1 cost 2/1 ephemeral. Last breath, deal 1 to the enemy nexus. So essentially, if Monkey Idol is allowed to stay alive through those 3 round starts, you're going to do at 3 damage to the opponent and have an ephemeral guy. So if you play it on your round, at their start of round, you get a Powder Monkey. You can block with it and then get 1 to their nexus. If it's on your round, then you get 1. So you're going to get 2 times whatever the first round start is, assuming that he survives the entire thing. So there's kind of some room to be weird and annoying as a deck. I'm not sure how much any of us ever plans to play this guy. So it'll be interesting to kind of see what happens, because you can't really play it with Powder Kegs, because if you play with Powder Kegs, he'll actually deal 3 to himself, if I'm not mistaken, which is problematic. But then when the Powder Monkey comes in and dies, it'll deal 2 to the opponent. So, where do you kind of balance that out? And it's probably just nowhere, because he's kind of rubbish. Longtooth is a 4-drop 5/1. It's the shark with Overwhelm. Having 1 health is trash. It's just real bad. You get Vile Feasted, you get Withering Wailed, you get the Twisted Fated. It was just like overall pretty brutal. They've gone and they've given additional health, so now he's a 5/2. Where it really matters is for Chum the Waters, where you would give someone vulnerable and then do Longtooth. So being able to potentially survive any of those 1 health ones can be really nice. And maybe even some guy has 1 attack. I don't know. You beat up a Boom Crew rookie or something, and he survives, and it's like, all right, nice. Still don't see this seeing kind of enough play, but at least it's pseudo usable now, whereas it wasn't very great before. All right, let's go see. We're on our last ones. So Deep Meditation gets a nerf to go from 4 cost to 5 cost. It still has the cost 2 less if you cast 2+ spells last round. Draw 2 other spells. So I think the big thing here was, instead of making it cost 1 less per cast for playing 2 or less spells, they wanted to just be more expensive overall. So if you didn't play those spells, then now it's going to cost you 5 to go +1. If you did play those spells, now you're looking at paying 3. I think if they were looking for somewhere in the middle, they could have just had it reduce the cost by 1. So cost 1 less if you cast 2+ spells last round. But I think the big thing here was they were just seeing it way too much usage, and it was just way too good of a card, where you were paying 2 for it, and 2 was easily accessible because you just, you weren't going to play a drop, or you were going to underdrop, and you had that available mana anyways. The 1 additional cost, I don't think will make a huge difference, but having to spend, 3 mana, especially when you're trying to like save spell mana, is really a whole bit different ballgame from spending 2. It'll probably still see play in all of the decks that was running it before, because the effect was just quite good. Drawing 2 spells from your deck meant you were limited to specific good cards in your deck. And let's say you were limited on the number of spells you had in there, and you were willing to pay the full cost, then you could pretty much tutor up very specific things. Like, let's say you're playing like a Dawn and Dusk combo, or like Atrocity, things like those. You could just tutor them up by playing Deep Meditation like that. All right. Last but not least, we have Brood Awakening getting a change. With the adjustments and how they feel stuff was going with like indoor and just kind of jamming guys out, they've changed Brood Awakening from 5 cost to 6. The other relevant thought was that control decks were just playing Brood Awakening. It wasn't even for like an aggro spider deck. It was you'd skip 1, okay, skip 2, skip 3, and you would just Brood Awakening and be in the clear. You could actually still do that. Skip 1, skip 2, and then on 3 play Brood Awakening. So I think it was just overall like there were certain turns where you had some spell mana left over. Maybe you skipped 1, played a 2, played a 3, and then on 4 you Brood Awakening, and then you were able to kind of gum up the board versus aggro decks. I think that's probably the bigger one. That's where I was frequently. I was playing this in my deep deck for a while. And anyone wondering, I haven't actually been playing too much, a lot of schoolwork. But Brood Awakening is the last change. It's gone up 1 cost. It's at 6 now instead of 5. Still slow. Nothing else changed. But if you're looking for another in-depth video for overview of these patch changes, it's bit.ly/saucypatch3. Saucymailman.com is the infographic picture at the bottom. So switching over to the 1.2 patch notes, we'll skip over kind of the generic junk. They're just talking over like the rising tide metrics and then a bunch of the updates. Seems like they fixed most of the picture issues because they had some really wrong pictures at the beginning. In general, on their watch list, they do have Unyielding Spirit. I don't know about you guys, but I've had a lot of people kind of complain and talk about Unyielding Spirit and their concerns with it. There are some answers to dealing with that, and if you're really concerned about decks that run it, you could sit there with like your Detain or Splash, particularly for things like Will of Ionia. Um, there are a few other options. Actually, my brain's not working right now. I can't even recall them. But Detain and Will of Ionia were like the big ones for getting them out of there. Deep, we were playing Riptide plus Nautilus. We had access to Devourer. Those were like feasible options. But they said Unyielding Spirit has been among the more contentious cards, and they were concerned with kind of changing the numbers and just kind of killing it completely. So they're just watching it, while they consider adjustments. Pilfered cards, same thing. They felt like there were some issues with. I can't remember the 2-cost one that pilfers 2, and that kind of being a little bit too cheap. But they are monitoring it for now, and then they're monitoring the amount of Nexus damage cards in Rising Tides. They've still talked about Karma and Ezreal. They had minor concerns about it, but it kind of dropped off a bit. So they kind of scaled back a bit, and that's probably why we only see Karma take a 1 hit. And they'll just continue to kind of monitor the win rates for now. They clarified a bunch of rule text clarity. We get access to a Rainbow Poro now. I actually got to go buy that thing. I forgot to. It's going to cost the total of 0 gold if you buy it now. So it's available until July 7th, it says, and this should be popping up today/tomorrow. That's my base expectations. We got some new emotes, some card backs, expedition adjustments. Nothing big there. Some bug fixes. I don't actually remember half of these bug fixes. I wonder if they talked about the deep one where things weren't going deep at the time they were supposed to. I don't know. I never bothered submitting it, but I was playing. Oh my god! And I had my 1/4 die in combat first before my Devourer was fighting somebody, and he died. He like flipped over the 2, got me the health, but then my Devourer traded in combat when it should have if it got the deep. Won, and then my deck was like deep, and I was like, this is some BS, man. This is some BS. But all right, so checking over Swimstream's website, which obviously isn't going to be post changes. We're still looking Burn Aggro, Vi Bannerman, Lux Karma, and Corvina Control. So Lux Karma got pretty much punched by like small little things, but did get the Remembrance buff. Karma got hit so that you can't go like Karma into Lux on 5 then 6, but normally speaking, they didn't really do that anyways. Vi Bannerman, you got all those Demacia changes plus the Vi change, and Burn Aggro got hit with the 1 and 2 drop adjustments. So we'll see kind of what changes happen there. Let's go look at these two and see if there's anything else that kind of got adjusted in the grand scheme of things. Brood Awakening got hit for Corvina Control because now that costs 6. So it's a little bit harder there for them to do things, but realistically they didn't have like 1-drops anyways. So if you went 2 then 3, it would have been like you Vile Feast something and then you Skitterer on 3 and then you Brood Awakening on 4. But That just seemed less than likely. But that is the adjustment that they got hit with. Karma Lux was pretty much just the Karma. The Remembrance got the buff technically. Sorry, Deep Meditation actually got hit a bit, so that was a nerf to Karma Lux in that regard. But yeah, so everything in the tier 1 here actually got touched a bit. So that's pretty nice. And then let's pop over to Mobalytics to see if there's anything else here that we're missing. The only other one here is, Heimerdinger control. Heimerdinger had access to Vi, so realistically that one's a consideration. But none of the other items got. Oh no, they have Deep Meditation too. So yeah, interesting. I actually hadn't seen this Heimerdinger Vi deck yet. I like it. I like Heimerdinger. Heimerdinger's good to go. Let's go, baby. Well, that's the end of it for this week, folks. Thanks for listening, tuning in. I'm gonna try to get more games in so we can talk meta and like if we can, build anything to kind of beat the current meta. But this is kind of where we're at right now. We have no Freljord. I think it'd be interesting to try to push something to Masters and Freljord. Like I said, haven't played, so I'm still sitting in like Plat 3 or 2 or whatever right now. But thanks for listening, watching, and deuces.